Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this week's video I am embarrassed and frustrated and ultimately very, very happy. Let's paint. So what's been going on? Well, I've been away from the desk for just over a month, so I haven't had a paintbrush in my hand or anything, and that's the longest I have not painted for years and years and years, certainly since we started Cult. And it's come with a price. It's been really, really hard getting back into the groove. Now, this isn't a video about me sort of struggling and all the rest of it. There's not some like great revelation or anything like that. Well, there probably should be. That would be a better hook line. But yeah, essentially I was just really frustrating and embarrassing and all this to get back on the horse, but I needed to, right? I need to get going again, get painting again, get creating, get enjoying the hobby and everything. And rather helpfully, Games Workshop has sent us through this new Aethon Shaan model for review. And as soon as I saw him in the the previews a few weeks ago, I was like, that model's amazing. I want to make him a Space Wolf. So I've mentioned it before in other places, but one of my sort of hobby happy places to go to is to stick on some music and to make Space Wolf models, just kitbash them and make them and think up ideas and paint and all the rest of it. It's just one of those things. You know, I'm sure everyone's got them. I'd love to know what yours are, like what your sort of hobby, your go-to hobby places are. And for me, one of them is Space Wars, and often the music I'll stick on when I'm doing this is a band called Wardruna, a band I really loved them for a long time now, sort of decade or so now. I discovered them ago, and I was very lucky to get to go and see them actually a few weeks ago. And one of their more recent releases is a thing called Kvitravn or White Raven, and this sort of idea, they're a Nordic folklore band, and there's this idea in that folklore that the White Raven sort of associated with sort of death and mysticism and the crossing over between realms and all that sort of thing. And I just thought, well, what a cool idea, like for a wolf priest. Like the way the Space Wolves have their wolf priests is they sort of fulfill both the chaplain role but also the apothecary role. I thought that could be quite cool. Maybe we could do something with that. So that was the overall sort of inspiration for this mini. And when it arrived, I thought, right, let's dig in, and I just hoped it wouldn't be too difficult to tweak and have some fun with. And I didn't really have any firm ideas of what I wanted to use bits wise or anything like that for the model. I just kind of wanted to do what I always do with it, is stick the music on and enjoy and sort of daydream and try and create some things. So what I'll try and do when I'm taking a base model, particularly these the newer Games Workshop models that we've had over the last sort of few years, where they are they're very dynamic, often the posing, but they're quite restrictive potentially in their sub-assemblies, whatever you want to call it. Basically, you often have to build them nearly in their entirety and then chop them up to get what you want. So I built him to the stage you can see on the screen now. And this is when I basically just started chopping off different arms and stuff from different Space Wolf kits. So obviously you've got the Wolf Priest kit, which comes with a variety of arms, actually. He's got these cool little daggers, and he's got some pistols and the Crozius. I don't know if the Wolf Crozius has a different name, but it's that one. So I started playing around with these. The nice thing is that I thought initially that his rear arm, his left arm, the claw there was holding on to the ruins and stuff that he's on, but actually it's not. He's just sort of perched on them, as it were. He's not hanging on, which meant that I could do something with both arms, which was super cool. So off the Wolfguard, whatever the new 3-man wolf Space Wolves unit is, where they've got a little wolf. I don't think they're lone wolves, but they're kind of like lone wolves used to be, but it's like an individual marine and then a little wolf. There was this nice sort of right arm here with the axe, and I thought, oh, okay, yeah, let's see if that I love the way that sort of sat across the body. So, but I wanted the Crozius to be in it, so did a little sort of snip here and there to get it in the to get it in the right place. And I say that I'm sure I'm not alone. Loads of people have it, but when you've been away for a while, I just felt like I was learning everything all over again. Like even down to the idea of sort of how to go about a project, how to craft things and execute ideas. For full transparency, I tried to jump back in with the Miao Ying dragon, in a dragon form last week, and it was an absolute disaster, which is why you didn't have a video last week. Who'd have thought that, after some time away, starting with a massive dragon centerpiece model, it for 1 week's filming was possibly a slightly ambitious idea. But she'll come further down the line. I'll update you guys on the cafe project soon. But yeah, it just sort of felt like everything was taking longer to do, and then it turned out as well, like with these, I should have just built him a bit further down the line, because that was when I discovered the left hand didn't attach, and it turned out I preferred the Crozius in his left arm. So after doing a very delicate and quite accurate transplant to the Crozius, I then just had to put it back on its original arm to put it in there. But yeah, in the end, it was nice and simple. The whole of the right arm was replaced from the shoulder downwards, and then the left arm, you can do a nice clean snip at the elbow, and I replaced it there with the rest of the Crozius arm and stuff. And then really it was a case of just tidying up any Ravenguard symbols on the rest of the mini. That was nice and simple. A bit of sanding, a bit of scraping. The foot typically is sculpted onto the foot, and like one toe of the other foot is sculpted onto the base, which is a bit annoying. So when it comes to painting, I'll need to remember that, because I don't want to paint him in his entirety like this. But now I had the kind of the pose was there, the main bits of the main components of the conversion were there. I tried loads of different heads and settled on this one in the end. But one of the things that I really noticed was the way he's angled here is he's kind of staring at the ground, and I didn't love it. I wanted him to look a bit more menacing, like he was looking at some prey or whatever, a target. So I just needed to change the angle of the way the base sat, just to bring him up so his eyeline would come. And this for me is one of the keys when you're creating your own character from an existing model, is to try and change either the golden angle that you're going to look at him from, change some of the silhouette elements if you can. So for me, by changing the angle where you want to look at him almost straight on rather than slightly off to the side, as we've been shown Aethon before, but then also, as I say, to change the angle of where he's looking, I felt like that was all it needed. Really, it was all of a sudden now it was my character, and I could have some fun, sort of coming up with stories for him and playing games with him and all the rest of it. I wanted to do a little bit of detailing now to the armour. I love the way that Space Wolf's armour often looks a little bit more personalised and perhaps a little bit sort of older and a bit more gnarly, particularly with the Wolf Priest and stuff. So I wanted to add a few little bonding studs to some part of the armour, and it felt like the shin here was the obvious place. And I've done these the same way that I do rivets. So I've taken a piece of foil here. It's called stamping foil. I just go on Amazon and Google stamping foil, and you'll find a pack of it for a few quid. And then I'm using various drill bits. I use the back of the drill bit as a punch. And all I do is put the foil over a soft surface. So you could put it over like a sponge or a cloth, or here this is just a little silicone pad, like a cutting pad. But it's got a little bit of give is the key, so that then as you punch through the foil, you leave that size of disc essentially as you cut out, and it has a little curve to it as well, which is nice. And then it's just a case of sort of being really careful and gluing it in place. Another little detail I wanted, I removed the I don't know what you call it really, the hangy down cloth tabard thing from his right arm, but I left the one on his left because I thought it was really cool. But I wanted to, again, just make it look a bit more wolfy. So I looked at the original Wolf Priest kit, and he's got these lapels, I guess they almost are, aren't they? So I thought, I'll do that with this one. So I just chopped off the detail. If I end up using that Wolf Priest model in the future, which I may well do, I'll have to come up with and figure out a way to replace this end bit on him. But, I figured that was a problem for future me. For this model, I wanted to use it. So rather than faff around, I just nicked it off that and used it on there. And then the only other little bit I've put on here is the necklace from the Bloodclaws kit, just around his collar. So in the end, there was very few kits involved. I had umpteen Space Wolf kits on the desk to do it. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons I love hobbying on the Space Wolves so much, is that there's so much scope to create your own characters from them, and there's so many bits from the kits. I think their recent update, was just absolutely brilliant. Really was. And it's given us all these new kits to play with, and it kind of feels like the old days of hobbying, as it were. So I say the old days, kind of feels like a decade ago or so, when you'd hobby with Space Marine stuff, and it was kind of a bit more Lego-like. You just cut everything out, put them together how you want to assemble your own characters from it. And I think that's why I find them so fun to do. But yeah, in the end, it was really just 2 kits. It's Aethon Shaan and the Wolf Priest kit, essentially. The necklace I thought was nice because I've left, as you can see, nearly all the details on there of the Ravenguard stuff because I love all the feathers and the bird skulls. That was what gave me the idea in the first place of the White Raven. This gnarly old Wolf Priest who maybe was a little bit more involved with, giving the last rites to a fallen, Marine and things like that. So yeah, actually, and I guess that's often the best conversions and kit bashes are in the end, isn't it? Is when they're a little bit more simple, but just lots of thought still got into them. But actually, the execution of them is still fairly simple. So I've muddled my way through the kit bash, and now I guess it's time to muddle my way through the painting. So first up, let's touch on the armour. Now, sub-assembly wise, I have gone pretty simple with this. I've kept the head separate. I had to carve out the sort of groove for the head to go in. Incidentally, there's sort of a plug there which helps the helmet normally sit a bit higher up, so I just had to drill that out. Then pinned the main part of the body there, and then I've just kept the backpack blue tacked onto the back of the body. So because I want to paint the armour and stuff all as one, and then I can remove the backpack to paint the feathered detail a little bit later. So again, for full transparency, I feel like I've completely forgotten how to paint, and trust me, the video gets better as it goes on. I promise. I think, maybe. Anyway, I like it. For the paint, something nice and simple. For me, the obvious place to have a light source coming in from here was top right as we look at it, because he's got that, his left leg is raised up, so it's horizontal, the thigh. Really lovely place to put a highlight. That nice big shin there as well on his right leg to catch the highlight at the bottom. Nice open pose. It just felt like that was the really obvious position to do the light from. Now, as I say, I feel like I'd forgotten everything about painting. So when it came to colour choices, an awful lot of what I did here was just what was on the desk in front of me from various other projects. I just had to get painting. I had to get moving again. I had to get that muscle memory back and just get going. I thought, all right, let's start off with a black armour. I've used the, whatever it's called here, Ulthuan Grey Air as my sort of pre-shade, pre-highlight. It's always good to have different recipes for black armour, right? Everyone likes those, like grey armour. You can never have too many. So here's just another way of doing black. So I've used Ulthuan Grey Air here. You can see it's sort of slightly blue-grey. And I'm going in, not trying to do each highlight in one go. I'm building them up slowly, just to get where I want them to. And then I've just lightened up the shoulder pads there because I know they're going to be yellow later down the line. Now, my buddy Dan recently picked up a load of the AK QuickGen paints. And if you've watched the channel for any time, you'll know I'm a huge fan of Citadel contrast paints. I use them in basically every project I do. Airbrush, hairy brush, all sorts. I think they're wonderful. And I know other companies have come out with their sort of versions of contrast paints. And up until now, I haven't got on with any of them. I found them all to be pretty inferior. But the AKs is a big range. I say inferior. I haven't enjoyed working with them. The AK range is pretty big. I enjoy using AK's other paints and stuff. But before jumping in with going and buying them, I thought I'll just borrow them off a mate and see if they're any good. And one of the colours in there was this black, this night black, and this really cool sort of really dark purpley blue-black colour. I thought, brilliant. Let's do black by doing black over a pre-shade. So that's all I've done. I've thinned it down with just normal airbrush thinner and then done a few layers of that over the pre-shade to give us the black armour. When I've been spraying here, I've been spraying about 20 to 25 psi, and I'm using a 0.4mm needle and nozzle in my airbrush. You'll obviously need to adjust your dilution and your pressure and everything given the environment you're spraying in. But this is what late summer in the UK, and that tends to be my settings for 80-90% of the year when I'm painting over here. Then for the shoulder pads, I just thought I'd have a little bit of fun and get a little bit of texture. I remembered back to when I painted a Death Guard character 6 months or so ago. I really, really enjoyed myself on that project. It was quite fast and loose. It was very relaxing. There wasn't really any pressure on it. And the level of accuracy I needed on that wasn't huge. And I'm really finding here, I keep mentioning that just getting that motor skill back in my hands, getting that accuracy of of touch and how hard to touch the model with the brush and all that sort of thing. I was really struggling with on this paint job, and again doing it whilst filming it as well. So I thought, well, if I go for that slightly sort of looser style, then maybe it won't matter quite so much, as long as I can get the colours right and roughly in the light and stuff in the right areas. It still should look pretty cool. So for the yellow, I chose to use a sort of pinky orangey flesh colour. I think it's is it Catachan flesh? No, whatever it was, it's up on the screen. Bugman's glow, something like that. So yeah, just stipple that over, and then stipple over the yellow, and then I've gone in with a contrast yellow here, Iyanden Yellow, one of my favourites, and I chose this one because that nice orange yellow is that sort of classic, in my head anyway, that classic Space Wolves yellow always has that real lovely orangey look in the shadows, and I really like that. And I thought, I know Iyanden very well. It's one of those paints. I think I'm on my third bottle of it, and you know the ones that you buy often tend to be there's a reason for it, right? And then yeah, just sort of gave it a glaze of that really, to enrich in that colour, and push that orange in the shadows as well. Then for his, I don't know what this thing is, ribbon, streamer, something. I wanted to do it at this point because I was going to do some decal work, so I thought I'll do this at this stage, even though it's nothing to do with the armour, and I need to get it done now so I can do all the decals at the same step. And this was just a case of scritchy scratches, a brown, and then a Dektan colour over the top. Again, I'm not overthinking things here really. I've just chosen it to be nice and light so that it stands out against the rest of the model. I suppose that was one of the things to consider with this, that I knew there was going to be a white beard, white feathers, and then bone and this streamer thing. So what I wanted to do was make sure I sort of didn't do the same colour on any of them, so they were easy to distinguish from each other. So then it was a case, once that was dry, then it was a case of doing the decals. So I've given the model a couple of coats of gloss varnish, polyurethane gloss varnish, nice sort of solid crispy shell of gloss varnish here, which means that we can work our decals over them, and we know that they'll behave and just be easy to manipulate and deal with, and we can get a good end result. Provided I found you give that varnish the time to dry. So I probably gave it a good hour or two to cure before I did it, and whilst I was waiting for it to cure, I cracked on with the face. I think this face is amazing. I think loads of the new Space Wolf heads are fantastic, and I'm really glad I finished off with this one. I finished up with this one. Don't worry, it comes back into shot in a minute. But obviously it's the face. It's going to be a very focal point, but particularly I think on the Wolf Priest, when they've got that black armour as well, it basically means everything else stands out a bit more. It's like when you put a black rim on a base, or you black out the details, anything like that. Other stuff stands out more. So I just gave it a really heavy white zenithal pre-shade over the black, so it's kind of top down. And then I grabbed another one of the AK paints. So this was Reddish Flesh, and I just thought I'd pop it on with a brush, see what it looked like at first. And I was like, oh, this is an awesome colour. So when I do it again, I probably wouldn't bother doing the brush coat first. I just wanted to see what it looked like. I'd probably just go straight in with the flesh colour. So the flesh colour I've chosen here in the end was flat flesh. It's an old Vallejo colour. It's just a light flesh. It's probably somewhere between Cadian flesh tone and Kislev flesh, if you sort of use Citadel. So yeah, a few coats of that. And then I go back in the airbrush this time with the reddish flesh, and I'm spraying it from below and the sides just to catch the areas of shadow. And I really, really love the sort of quite over the top almost, I think, colour that we've got in the head here. But I feel like the face sculpt itself is that little bit more caricature, and I actually think the colours and stuff work quite nicely with it. The sort of the tone I feel is the same. The tone of the sculpt and the tone of the actual colours on it I feel are quite complementary to each other. I've really enjoyed this doing this face, and it was very simple. This is sped up, but I'm shaking all over the place, my hands and everything. I'm really struggling to get going again. But all I've done here is I'm going back in with the flat flesh with my hairy brush, and back in with the reddish flesh with my hairy brush. And when we do them with a hairy brush, you get a different effect than when you airbrush them on. So you can still use it with a hairy brush as a highlight, for instance. And then I just wanted to put a bunch of tattoos on here. I kind of thought the sculpt looked a little bit like Floki from the show Vikings when he gets old. So I thought, kind of, he always had these like face paint and stuff on. and tattoos, and I thought that could be kind of cool, like get a bit of that vibe. So that was just a bit thin down black, and I just went in and did it. Yeah, I'd like to pick up that Wolf Priest model again and have another go, at that head at some point, because I think it's a really cool sculpt. I really enjoyed using it. Now, I kept looking at the model and I kept feeling like the armour had ended up a little bit too dark grey rather than black, and I think this was to do with just me not going in and readjusting the amount of area that was the shadow, the black, with my airbrush after I'd put the highlight colour in. Something I normally do, and I just didn't on this paint job. So I've just decided to go in here and use some sort of oil paint to deal with that issue. So it's quite a thick oil wash. I've thinned the oil paint down with mineral spirits, white spirits, and it's much thicker than a traditional, like an acrylic wash, this one, because what I want it to do is to wash into the recesses, but also just kind of sort of stick and stay there on the surfaces, so that I can glaze over some areas with it, just to darken the whole panel out. And then where it sort of bleeds out ever so slightly from those recesses, once it's dry like it is now, so you can kind of see it there on his thigh, I'll just buff it out a little bit with a clean brush here, and it'll just pushes more of that black into the shadows, so that we have, in my opinion, now we have something that looks like black armour, with that sort of purpley grey or bluey grey highlight, rather than, as I say before, a little bit between I felt, was it grey, was it black? And again, because in being the Space Wolf, I really didn't want that ambiguity with the model, like he was a Wolf Priest. Now, a little bit like I've said with things like the bone and the white beard and the feathers, there was going to be a few different leather elements on the miniature. Whilst it was fun to try out a few different new paints on this model, I also didn't want to stress myself out too much with things like this. Was trying to relax and enjoy myself, so I've just fallen back on old recipes. So I wanted two different leather recipes, so I went for Thondir Brown as the base for one of them, kind of like a burnt umber colour, and then Rhinox Hide. This is an old Rhinox Hide, I think it is. It's a little bit more red than the newer one, but the point was a different brown to that Thondir Brown base, so I did that for his gloves, and then I did the Thondir for the rest. And then all I've done is highlight the Thondir areas with Steel Legion Drab. So again, keeping it more that sort of relatively neutral brown, sort of that burnt umber, sort of more neutral brown colour. And then for the Rhinox Hide areas, lent more into that reddy orange thing. So I've just used Mournfang Brown as the highlight for them. So I can't really give painting tips at all in this video, because it was, yes, just a struggle the whole way through. But hopefully I'm able to explain sort of the colour choices and the things like that initially. It's been really funny watching the video back, doing the editing, because I can see it coming back as the video goes on, which is really fun. Like the execution's better, you know, the camera shots are better, the brush strokes are better. So it's just got me really pumped now for getting rolling with next week's video and the one after and the one after and the one after. Yeah, very happy to be back at the desk. For the skulls, of which there are loads, of which I missed loads at this stage as well. Again, I just wanted a different base colour, so rather than, like, maybe I'd have used Thondir or something in the past, here I've used Catachan flesh. Catachan? Don't know. I reckon I'm going to need to know how to say that soon. I've got a feeling we're going to get Catachan stuff. There's all this Armageddon stuff going on right at the minute with 40k. I'm very out of the loop with stuff at the minute, so I'm just sort of listening to friends and rumours. But if Armageddon and stuff's happening, surely they're going to do something with Catachan. I reckon that's more likely than Steel Legion. I don't know, maybe. We'll see. And then, I don't know what colour I've used here. Is it Zandri Dust? It popped up on the screen. Basically, again, a different lighter colour. And then what popped over and got the bag of washes out, I think it's called Mortarian Grime. Just green, really. So I just wanted a greeny brown colour to pop over that, the bird skulls, just to make them look a bit nasty, really. I love that sort of green kind of hue it gives them. I think it's really, yeah, I love that when I'm painting bone, adding a bit of green in there. Then for the feathers, which obviously a pretty significant part of this model, and actually the original inspiration for the entire paint job, so I needed to get them right. But I knew I couldn't execute my brushstrokes quite how I wanted. So as I say, I've gone for a more scratchy kind of, you know, I don't know what the style is, artsy-fartsy style, whatever you want to call it, not so accurate. So I just literally grabbed a load of greys off the shelf and thought, right, let's build up and build some white feathers. I based them using Corvus Black. I love this colour. I just really like it. I need to find a project where I can use it as like the main colour. I think there's just something about it I find really appealing. And then it was a case of pop those greys on the palette, started just mixing them together, keeping them really nice and dilute the mix, and therefore wiping nearly all of that paint off on a piece of kitchen paper so it didn't flood the model. And then I've just gone in and I've just started doing these little, dashes across all of the individual feathers to kind of represent those the individual. Are they called? I don't actually know what it's called. Is the feather the whole thing? And then these little, it's like the hairs, isn't it, of the feather? Should have looked that one up. If you know, let me know in the comments what's actually called this bit. But yeah, basically, all the fine individual bits of a feather. I just started going in and just painting them loads in. And it took quite a while, but because every individual stroke had very little pressure on it, it was nice and relaxing to do. It didn't stress me out. If you made a mistake, it didn't matter because you're going to hide it. And then we would just build it up, adding more and more of the lighter greys into the mix. And then once it was about this colour here, I started focusing only really on the bits of the feathers that were facing up towards the light, and just leaving the rest of them as I'd done. There's lots of elements of the model which are almost barely painted, but it didn't really matter for me in this case. I kind of felt like I was getting my point across. I was telling the story I wanted to tell with the mini, and then just tried to be a little bit more accurate here around the sort of focal point around that head area. And that's something I've tried to do on the model as a whole, just where possible, got the accuracy on the focal points. But yes, it's a brilliant mini. This, like, I've never been a huge Ravenguard fan, but those of you that are, I'm very happy for you. And those of you that aren't, it's still a wicked model, so it's worth grabbing if you like some feathers. And then for his grey beard, I didn't want it to look like the feathers. So whereas with the feathers, I'd started from that sort of blue-black base. From his beard, I wanted to start from a brown base, as if he'd had brown hair perhaps in the past, and it was turning grey. So at this point, it's just using the paints that were already on the palette. So we've got browns on there from when we were doing the leather, and we've got various greys on there from when we were doing the feathers. So it was just a case of mixing them together to start to create some nice sort of tones. And then, yeah, just building it up and, again, making it a bit lighter and a bit more focused around the middle part of his face, and not worrying so much about, the highlights and stuff around, his ears and the sides of his head. But yeah, very, very characterful sculpt this. I think the more of them I do of these wolves, the more I'm enjoying them, and I'm just more impressed I am with that recent release that they got. So I've got him up to this point. I'm probably about 80-ish% done. And then I thought I need to address the base. So I've just used a bit of texture paste on the bottom there to build up that void from where I'd snipped it. And now, because my palette was full of the browns and greys, I thought, I'll do the rock. I'll do the base here while I've got it. So you can see the colours I'm using. I'm just mixing them together, letting them wet blend a bit on the model here and there. Just making it interesting. I think rock is always more interesting, right, when you've got lots of different colours in it. So that's what I was trying to achieve here. Just, again, keeping the paint nice and dilute, so that the layers were fairly see-through, fairly translucent. So you've got all these lovely different sort of blends of colours that you were creating on the model, and just a very relaxing way of painting. And this is that point where I was saying when I was watching the video back, I was like, you were starting to find your groove here. And this is, I've really enjoyed painting like this, and I think I do want to, reminds me of that Nurgle guy quite a lot. I think I want to push that style more. I think, if I don't know what the style is, but yeah, if I figure it out, I'll know how to learn. I'll ask Andy, he'll know. And then for the metal bits, I've just used Mournfang Brown here, just to represent that sort of rusty old metal on there. And then, speaking of metals, there's a few on him on the model. The silvers are literally just Iron Warriors, but the gold is a little bit more than that. So I've got the new P3 paints, or newish P3 paints, and they've got some of those lovely metallics in there. So I thought I'd use those on this. So the Blighted Gold for this one. And then washed all the, there you can see, I kept doing this, getting paint where I didn't want it, and I didn't used to do that before. Like this model, just every time I was painting things, I was getting splotches of paint where I didn't want them. Then just use Rattling Grime as the wash over the silver and the gold. So this is a contrast paint, but if you thin it with a little bit of water, it basically just behaves like a traditional wash. This is my sort of go-to generic, sort of metal wash. And again, Poxwalker here, one of my favourite sort of washes to put over gold. I love the sort of little patina it gives it. Just makes it look a bit old and, I'm not oxidised, but it's got a bit of something to it, which I really enjoy. So now it was kind of the finishing touches really of the miniature, and for Marines, that's often things like battle damage and weathering. So just on his shoulder pads, just gone back in with the yellow here and just doing a few little chips and scratches here. I haven't sort of done any edge highlighting at all on the model, and I'm not doing the level of sort of tippy tappy chips I would often do on a miniature reader on this. It's really just a few here and there on those focal points. So I've just gone in with the yellow and just doing a few little dashes here and there. And then for the black armour itself, rather than going in with a grey and doing a load of that and browns and all of that, I've just gone in with a silver here, and really just trying to be very, very accurate as I can be. Just doing a few sort of choice little chips with the silver here, again on areas that the eye is drawn to. So for instance, the back of his right leg here, I won't have done anything on at all, and I don't think it matters. I really quite like this idea of executing different areas of the model to a different level depending on how much of a focal point they are. Almost like as the model fades out of focus, you're spending less time on that part of it when you're viewing it. It's something very good painters do. Quite a few very good painters I know of, model painters, do for their display pieces. And it's something I'd like to, I think, maybe explore a bit more with doing on the gaming stuff as well. So now I've just popped 3 oil paints on a little bit of tissue paper there just to leach out a bit of the excess oil. I've got these are Absalon colours. This is Industrial Earth, Sepia and Dark Rust, but essentially we're looking at something like a burnt sienna, a burnt umber, and then more of a raw umber colour. And I'm just dotting them around the model, working them around with a little bit of mineral spirits just to add a bit of colour and life into different parts of the model, grunge it up in certain areas, and so just make him feel a bit more lived in. You don't need to be worrying about varnishing and things like that. As long as your acrylic paint is dry, it's not going to react with your oil paint or your thinners that you use for your oils. So don't worry about that. But a lot of the footage is sped up here, but it's hopefully, as you can see, none of the steps are laborious or anything like that. And then a load of the dark rust there just on the metal. But yeah, please let me know what you'd like to see coming up. We're kind of into Cult Point 2.0 era now. Ben is now full-time, which is amazing. And that's largely thanks to you guys that support us over on Patreon. Not only are you getting, videos from usually Andy over there. At the moment, he's documenting his Golden Demon journey for Spiel. Some brilliant. He's gone through some trials and tribulations on it for sure, but it's an absolutely stunning concept. And he's done this beautiful pinky purple this week on one of the miniatures involved in it. Absolutely wonderful. So if you'd like to go and see things like that, pop over, check out our Patreon, and that allows Andy and myself and now Ben to be doing this full time, so producing content for you on various platforms. So really do appreciate it. If for any reason you can't support us there, pop the like down here on the YouTube, hit subscribe, make a comment, share it with your mates. It's a massive, massive benefit to us when you do that, and we do really, really appreciate it. For the basing, I was recently sent by this company, Muddy Paws. They said, do you want to try some of our basing products out? I was like, yeah, absolutely, because it was very serendipitous as well, because I was working on Cathay and thinking I want to improve my basing and try some things out. And they said, we'll send it over and have a play with it. So I'm under no, what's the word? I don't have to show you guys this. There's no paid for content here or anything like that. It's, give it a go. And I thought, oh, cool, yeah, let's try it out on this base. I will do a dedicated video on this product because I think it's flipping great. But I want to have a little bit more of a play with it and really get my eye in. But just this is literally my first impressions bit. I've just stuck it in the video here because I thought might as well start a conversation going. But absolutely love this stuff. You only have to use water. You don't have to use glue at all, and the water sets it all. and then you have this mix. I think it's absolutely brilliant idea and really, really cool look and effect. But say I want to play around with it quite a lot more and see what can be achieved with the rest, with a bit more practice. So there we go. There he is done. After an awful lot of waffling and a lot of not terribly good painting, we've ended up with this lad, who I'm really proud of. I was frustrated. I was embarrassed. I knew I was going to have to show my work and share it, the public domain, as it were, and there's always pressure associated with that. But there was, when you're not feeling super confident, but you need to get that content out because you guys support us, and that's our part of the deal. I had to do it, and I'm really glad I did, because actually, whilst the execution elements of it aren't where I want them to be, the creativity, the creation part of this project and the hobby was brilliant. It was, I feel, 10 times better than I did 5 days ago or whatever when I started on the project. And already, as I say, that muscle memory's coming back. There's less fatigue sitting at the desk, all those things that we deal with the hobby. And so it's absolutely worth it. And I will stick this guy on the shelf, and it just, really, really happy. And I'm really glad I've been able to do one of the models that I often will do off camera, as it were, personal project. I say when I'm feeling a bit blue or don't know what to do, I say it's often Space Wolves that I'll come back to. So it's kind of nice to do one of those models for the channel as well. Let me know what you think. I do think he's come out a little bit different to how I've painted perhaps in recent times. And to be fair, I think the last few have done, like that Iron Hands character felt a bit different. That Death Guard guy felt a bit different. The Cathay felt a bit different, but in a use the same word again, in a different way. I felt they were executed to a much more refined standard than I'd been doing, whereas this guy's perhaps the complete opposite to that, along with, say, the Iron Hands guy and the Wordbearers one to a degree. So let me know what you think, and let me know what you'd like to see. I've got a few projects lined up. I'd like to venture into the Badab Wars over the next few weeks. So I've got a few different chapters I want to do some pieces for that, just because I've had the ideas for ages and I want to get them out there and enjoy sharing them. But as ever, if you've got any questions about anything I've done in the video, please pop them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. The videos will start getting slicker again, guys, I'm sure. But if you do anything you'd like me to cover, do let me know, and I'm looking forward to getting to it over the rest of the year. So thanks ever so much for all of your support. Take care, and I'll see you next time. If you've liked any of the models in this video and you fancy having an army of them yourself, but perhaps you don't have the time or wherewithal to get it done, consider dropping us an email at commissions@cultofpaint.com, and maybe Ben can sort you out.